Today I'm going to talk about one of the most amazing techniques in saxophone, and it's called subtone. A lot of you are already doing it or are trying to do it, but subtone is one of the most just lush and gorgeous things you can do with the saxophone to get this nice jazzy, chill and relaxed sound. The first thing to understand is that the saxophone is an instrument that, because of its shape and the shape of the tube, it's actually very hard to play soft in the low register because it's very hunky, it's very harsh. You get a lot of resistance back. And the subtone, what it does is you over relax the jaw a little bit with a great air support to get that undertone, really beautiful, airy notes, specifically on the low range. And today I want to show you how I do them and how I've trained them, because believe it or not, I had the worst subtone. It took me honestly like 4 years playing the saxophone, roughly 3 to 4 years when I started playing the saxophone to really get that subtone, mainly because I was having a lot of tension in my mouth. And the subtone is something that you can use on really any style of music, just to get that warm, beautiful low range. And it works for alto, for tenor mainly, but of course you can do the subtone on soprano instead of getting that nasal, harsh sound in the low range on soprano. You can use subtone. You can use it even in bari. Now it's really hard to get it on bari, but you can still get that subtone. And of course, the main horn where you will hear the subtone is the tenor saxophone, which is why I picked my tenor to make today's video, because it's really where the subtone shines the most. Is where you're going to hear those classic jazz players use the subtone a lot. Now, the first thing to understand about the subtone is, first, you need to get a good plain sound without it, of course. You know, I was trying to attempt to do the subtone without actually having a good sound or working on my airflow before. So make sure, before you watch this video, if you haven't done yet, please check out my other 2 videos about saxophone sound and technique. There's one where I exclusively talk about mastering your airflow and getting a better sound on your horn. And then you can see this other one right here. In this one, I talk about how to add depth to your sound and how to enhance your overall sound. Also, I have another one about fixing your embouchure problems. Just all of those videos are great to watch before this one, just because you already need a good airflow, and a lot of the things I talk about in those videos need to be happening 100% before you attempt to do a subtone. Okay, so if you're doing a subtone and it just doesn't, a lot of the big mistakes I see is you try to do a subtone and the note instantly cracks, or you're not having enough air support, or there's extremely a lot of tension being caused here on your embouchure. Okay, so make sure to watch those videos. Now, let's dig right into it. The best way to practice subtone, and first let's identify the actual sound of it, right? If I play without subtone, that means I'm just going to play with my nice airflow, no tongue, and if I play the low range, that's sort of the sound without subtone. Now, that's kind of played in a sort of mezzo forte. You can still play soft without subtone. It's going to be harder because on the saxophone you get a lot of back pressure when you play low because of how the instrument is made. It's really hard to play soft and low, especially without subtone, right? Instantly get that back pressure, and it's even worse. In my case, I have a 9-star mouthpiece, which is my Sio signature mouthpiece here, so it is harder because I have a big tip opening. You know, so in classical you don't really use the subtone, but you use a different setup to basically get a more kind of a straight, not that like potent low range of the horn. But it's really a jazz technique started in the contemporary stuff. Now, what the subtone is basically from that low note. First, you need to be able to get around a nice low note without it, right? So like that, if I grab a D natural in the tenor, did you notice I played with no tongue? So on those other videos I showed you, I talk about the real importance of actually producing your sound with no tongue. As a practice, for the first 5 to 10 minutes on your practice should be tongueless, right? So don't just spit out the low note with your tongue, right? Do it actually without the tongue, and you're going to try to not play it too harsh either. a few other notes around it, right? That's low range without subtone. Now, to get the subtone, the best practice first is to get that breathing going, right? I'm going to get as much support as I can, and then I'm going to play the regular note, and then I'm going to try to identify how I need to relax to get the subtone. So don't just try to attempt the subtone from scratch, because you might end up doing weird things with your embouchure. Just try to go under the tone, relax until you're going to get this airy sound with a lot less back pressure, right? So I'm going to do the D without it, then I'm going to try to identify how I can go down to that subtone. See, as soon as I do the subtone, it becomes a lot easier to play really soft. And now, take a look at my jaw here as I'm doing it. Sometimes it's a little hard to identify because I'm starting the note without the subtone. Now, if I start it completely with the subtone, you get this mushy, beautiful, lush sound, right? Now, you need a lot of air for the subtone, and this is something that I try to talk a lot about, especially to my coaching students. When you're playing soft, you need more air. And a lot of people think, you need the air to play loud, especially initially on the saxophone. It seems like you need a lot of air. Playing loud is easy, but you need a lot of air to play soft and round and full, because that requires the biggest amount of support, airflow, and a really good diaphragm control of your air to be able to play soft and still sound round. The subtone requires sometimes more air. Well, you're not going to get that much resistance as without the subtone, but you still need a lot of air to make it sound round and nice, right? And not make weird noises. Like it could happen something like this. Those are typical little mistakes on the subtone, right? Over relaxing and then not having enough air support, so the note kind of either dies or you get the octave above. So make sure. See, there's like a completely relaxed, thick, round sound that the subtone can give you. So when I practice subtone like this, I really try to play something around the low range. So the subtone has the biggest effect from the G below. Above the G doesn't really have an effect. It's going to start kind of messing up your sound if you over relax, right? Because what happens is the subtone really needs the once when you press all the fingers here, like F, E, D, even the B flat, the horn is bigger. Naturally, the air has more space to go through. So the relaxation gets compensated by the horn being bigger at that point. This is why the subtone doesn't really work on the high range. It works once you start around the G. And the lower you go, the more exaggerated the relaxation needs to be to really get that, that low B flat to sound really soft and with this subtone, right? So it's not an easy thing to achieve, especially properly. It took me a long, long time. But the way I would practice it would be first, no tongue at all. And then I would try to do the note without the subtone and then try to match and go under the subtone, right? So I'm going to try it again with a low B. So you see it even cuts away a little bit. That's fine. I'm trying to understand how the subtone needs to be made by my embouchure with a good air support. Then I would just go ahead and do the subtone by itself. Now you heard there, it got a little shaky, right? My lip got a little shaky. That's a little bit of lack of support. And it happens. It happens to me all the time. So I'm going to try it again. I'm going to breathe properly. You see, now it's better. So really relax, breathe properly, try to play first with no subtone, because that's the real saxophone sound. You need to really understand and get the low notes with no subtone, but don't play them too harsh. Learn how to play soft with no subtone. It is hard because the low range of the saxophone in general is very honky because of the nature of how the instrument is built, of the shape of the tube. So you're going to get a lot of resistance. The subtone pretty much cuts away that resistance, and all of a sudden it becomes, actually, once you dominate and once you're really good at the subtone, it becomes really easy to do. And playing the low notes can become something really nice, enjoyable, and easy, like this. You see, it becomes something really beautiful, low but round, airy. It sort of has this beautiful airiness into it. Perfect for ballads, perfect for really anything where you want that nice and calm but round saxophone sound. Also in big bands, it was used a lot in saxophone sections. You can have a saxophone section playing in the low range with subtone. It's a totally different, more of a chill feeling than everybody playing like without it, right? So if you have something like you can have it like that with no subtone, or with subtone, and you can even play softer. So it is a great technique that allows you to play nice, soft, like a little whisper with a round sound, which just fits perfect for, you know, if you think about the old cats like Lester Young, Ben Webster, Johnny Hodges, they were using a lot of the subtone. It was just part of the style. It's part of how this instrument was shining on ballads. And then you would hear great players, for example, Dexter Gordon is a great example of how he would use both. He would use, a lot of times he would use the subtone, which would sound nice and like very airy and relaxing, and other times he would just use the plain note with no subtone, and it would just sound fat and full. It's just a different vibe, right? You can try to play melodies around the low range without, and then with a subtone. So for instance, Body and Soul lays down perfectly for the tenor in F minor for the tenor. I'm gonna play it without subtone, right? You sort of get this kind of thick sound, very imponent, right? Very like full on tenor sound. Now with subtone, you can play softer, and all of a sudden it could be more like a whisper, right? So you see, it's a totally different vibe. It's a stylistic nuance and element that will just help you really transform your playing and give you a completely different layer as a saxophone player. And I wanted to make this video just to show you a little bit of how I've trained my subtone. But honestly, I feel like all of my saxophone technique videos really go back to the number one thing that will really transform your overall sound, which is airflow. So make sure to go back to that video of mastering your airflow, where I really talk about that first thing. And I tell you this because I did not master it until way later on, that I realized I was not breathing properly. I was not having enough support. So then I developed a lot of bad habits, which of course I had other problems as well, not only the airflow, but everything else became a lot easier to fix when I started having really good air support and airflow. So make sure to go watch those videos, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you're a saxophone player or a musician, you want to get better technique, you want to get better at improvisation, you want to get better at arranging or composition or anything, well, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. I post a video tutorial every single Tuesday. So help me out, subscribe, and leave in the comments what would you like to see next on my future videos. I read all my comments, I try to reply to my comments, and I keep everything in mind. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed this one. Take care.